Welcome to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and a rebellion, it's a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering. We're here to break the trance of comfortability, reclaim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, the way showers, and the visionaries who chose their truth over comfort, their mission over fear, and their soul over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak, the ones who didn't fit in, well, because they were never meant to, and the ones who turned their pain into their power and their story into their medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth, it always finds its way home. Today on the Sacred Rebellion, we have a very special guest. Her name is Alison, the brand witch, a psychic biz coach and marketing expert who helps spiritual and spirituality curious entrepreneurs turn their divine assignment into an iconic as fuck sold out brand. She is the woman who helps you step into the category of one leadership by weaving soul, strategy, and pure magic into your messaging and positioning. Her work was born from her own second spiritual awakening the moment she walked away from a six-figure career, dove headfirst into her purpose, and built a brand that bridges intuition, energetics, and a business alchemy, all while healing from a decade-long mysterious illness that became her greatest initiation. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Let's dive into it. What was your first spiritual experience? Did you awaken as a child, or take me back to the first time you're like, there's more out there than what I'm seeing with the naked eye?
So definitely had lots of things happen through childhood. I could always see energy, but I didn't know I was seeing energy. I just thought everybody saw the world through that lens, right? But I also had a lot of fear around like even seeing angels, which is kind of interesting because angels are benevolent. Like just fear of being face to face with I'll say in quotes the unknown. So it didn't manifest too intensely, other than being a very strong clairsentient and empath, that's pretty common, I think, for all sensitive children. But then the real tipping point happened in college. This is kind of a fun story. So I was in my apartment. I was 20 years old with my best friend. I'm writing a book right now about my life, and then this is one of the opening stories in it. So I'm sitting in my room. It's like a beautiful spring day. We have the windows open. She's sitting on my bed across from me playing an acoustic guitar. I'm sitting by my CD player because I'm old, manning my CDs like Radiohead. And we had that playing in the background, packing a bowl. We were smoking weed. And I look up and I'm like, holy shit, she's not going to fucking believe this. Luckily, she did believe it. But I was like, Lauren, the entire wall behind you has nothing but threes. So, like, when you see energy, it's like translucent. That's what it was. I saw a bunch of threes energetically on the wall behind her. And I started to get afraid because I've had to work through a lot of fear programming. At that time, I had not worked through a lot of that fear programming. So I started to get afraid. Plus, I was a bit of a paranoid smoker. Let's add to that. And then the threes, as I got afraid, start turning into hearts and birds, and a silhouette of a woman appears in the middle, and she turns her head and looks at me. And I was like, Lauren, here's what's going on. Well, luckily, Lauren did believe me. Her mom was actually an energy healer and a psychic. So she was like, let's get my mom on the phone. So this was back in the day when nights and weekends were free. So thankfully it was a Saturday. She's calling her mom, and I step outside to get some fresh air. I'm on the front patio of my apartment, and there's threes in the sky, and there's threes in grass, and there's threes everywhere. And this was the moment where spirit, my third eye spontaneously opened. It was already somewhat open, but it was like in that moment, spirit was like, we can't dull this down anymore. And that was probably when I started getting really obsessed with like what's out there, what is out there beyond this third dimensional landscape that we live in.
That's so dope. I didn't have anything cool like that ever happen. I mean, I do now because I see things, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've experienced that a couple of times in a sleep state. It was actually not too long ago, I actually posted about it, and it was like I woke up and I could see triangles essentially moving out like in and out triangles. I was completely sober, just so we're aware. And it was moving in and out, and it was gold triangles everywhere. I see a lot of geometric shapes, and I code that way as well. And then there was eyes, like
Ooh.
actual eyes through all of the triangles, which are angels, we know that now, and all through the room, and I was just like, am I seeing this? Like, is this real?" And I'm like, "Am I asleep?" And then I, no, opened up my eyes. Anyways, I just sat there and and my
So cool.
body was just I could feel the
Yeah.
vibration, like a sea when you do a sound meditation and you can feel vibration and you're like, "I'm being activated right now."
Yeah.
Like, I think this had to have been in, August, first part of August of this year. Anyways, the next morning, I looked at my husband, I was like, "You will not believe this." And he's like, "You're not gonna believe what I saw last night." I was like, "Oh, what did you see?" And he's like, "There was red beams of light flying through our room last night." And I was like he's like, "I almost woke you up because it was kind of crazy." I double took and I could see the red lights going through our room, and I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna, one up you, but kind of one up you, but experience." And he was like and we were both we don't smoke weed or anything, so it was just like, whoa, it was so crazy, but I knew the message I kept receiving was, "This time it's different," and it was very specific, and it sounds a little bit like, you know, pretty much like spirits, like, "We're not watering this down anymore, it's go time," you know what I'm saying? It's really cool when I never really had anything like that. Does that make sense? Where I saw shit all the time as a kid, but
Yeah.
nothing like that, but I also didn't smoke weed either.
The funny thing is now I'm a teetotaler. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I eat all organic, like, I'm super lame now, but it's a great college story. It's a great, like, I'm
Totally.
20, I'm high as a kite, but, we know that people use plant-based medicine to raise their consciousness. I don't actively do that. So I know that my consciousness was raised in the moment, even though that's not what I went into it intentionally doing. Your story's really cool, by the way, though. Really cool.
So it's and it's so weird because even the other day I was doing an activation with SOs and she was like, activate the magnifier SO. And all of a sudden in my mind, I can see the field of what that SO holds. And then it was like, activate the shadow SO. And then that had a different field. And I was sitting there in the bathtub and I'm going, wow, this is really interesting that each aspect of these SOs has a different magnetic frequency encoding that I've never seen before. But I see numbers and I see
Mhm,
code and I see
mhm.
white, different things. That's typically how I code people is, like my biggest energetic protection is a honeycomb because it's a vibration of protection. It's a home, it's an energetic frequency. So it's like people don't utilize really what sacred geometry was actually created for, which is energy, really moving that energy in a different way. I feel like. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I think that's really cool you work directly with sacred geometry. I channel light language too, and I would say that's probably the closest I get to working with sacred geometry since, you're kinda, like, working with light codes in that area, but your gift's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've never met anyone else that it was just weird. I just
It's your
I was so
category of
flabbergasted
1.
the other
It's
day.
it's your category of 1. You know how I talk about with, like, creating your brand, your own unique gift creates your category of 1? Yeah, the fact that nobody else does that's your thing, that's your shtick, and that's what will make you and does make you unlike anyone else in your lane.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, we've known each other, I would say a couple years, right? We've kind of
Yeah,
been in each
actually,
other's
yeah.
field. Yeah, it's been a couple it's kinda weird when you think back because I feel like since 2020, everything's just hyper speed.
Yeah,
And
it is.
it's I'm
It
like,
really is.
"That was 5 years ago."
It's
Okay.
kinda crazy we've been connected that long. I didn't realize, but you're probably right.
Yeah. So from what I've seen you at the beginning to what you are now, you're very different. It's very,
Yeah.
I think one of my first things I saw of you was a live of you channeling with cards of different messages for businesses. And I was like, this is so cool. So tell me a little bit about how you went from your original business idea to, what you are today.
Yeah. So I still like to do a card channel. Like, not as active on Instagram lives. I don't know why. People love it. I should do it more. Good thing to bring up. I should do that again. People eat that shit up.
They do. They love channeled messages. It's like
I know.
for Halloween, and it was just like pick an object and then channel the messages. And I mean, people ate that shit up on Halloween. I mean, I was so glad I set
Yeah.
up that's because I would have been sending out so many damn messages. It was like so nice to just be like, whoop,
Yeah, maybe I should do that today. I have makeup on. It's a good day to go live. So, uh, you know,
knew it that so hard.
otherwise I just look like Adam Sandler and don't go live. So,
Homeless person is what I always refer to. I'm like, $1,000,000 or a homeless person. I don't really have an in between.
same, literally same. Adam Sandler or a a raving beauty and nothing in between. So, how did I go on this journey? So, I'm going to backpedal just a minute and say I started off actually as a spiritual life coach. So, I go through a second spiritual awakening. I think this context is a little bit important. I go through a second spiritual awakening. My first spiritual awakening was more like consciousness, like pure consciousness expansion. It wasn't a dark night of the soul like some people go, like, it wasn't that. It was just like, right? Like pure consciousness expansion. Then, so like I'm in my 20s, right? And then I go from college to grad school. And then from grad school, and I'm still like, in grad school, it started to temper a little bit because I was so focused on my studies that I wasn't exploring the beyond as much. And then I graduate from grad school and I get my first big girl job in Washington, D.C. And I get a job that is correlates with policy like everybody else in this damn area gets. So as I immerse myself in local culture, which is really political culture and is really the matrix, and as I immerse myself into my work, my consciousness starts to shrink, right? I don't see, and I just think, well, maybe that time in my life was just like a period. I'm not even seeing angel numbers anymore, which is just like a very bare minimum baseline of your consciousness being expanded. So, anyways, and I'm in my career. I'm moving up the ladder. I'm making six figures. I'm a research and policy bad bitch, right? Like I'm doing my thing. And then 2020 hits. And this is I think a lot of people had rebirths in 2020 or their first birth, right? And I can't explain what exactly happened other than I started getting exposed to what people might call conspiracy theories. I put that in quotes, and it's pushing against what my ego really sees as truth. And so there's this inner conflict, and this tail spins me to having an ego death and being like, I can't work in fucking policy anymore. I'm just playing a role of a puppet of the matrix, like I can't be a part of this anymore. So I save up a little bit of money and I get a slew of certifications and I quit my job and go all in on my business by 2021. I think I quit my job 10 months after starting my business, which was hellaciously scary. So I started off as a spiritual life coach. And what I realized during that process was I'm naturally business savvy. I'm very business savvy. I'm good at marketing. I'm good at all these things. And so I pivot to business coaching, which was the iteration that you met me doing, right? But that iteration, aside from those card pools, there was a gap. There was a gap between me teaching business strategy and my gifts. And the gifts were not woven into the strategy that I taught per se. Instead, I was kind of lame and I was very like the classic business coach of hire me to hit 10K months. Like everybody fucking says that. Everybody fucking says that. And I found myself creating this like muggle brand, so to speak. And so I went through a big rebrand myself after I really excavated, like, what are my gifts in terms of spiritually, and what are my gifts in terms of strategically, and how can I use this to elevate myself and make me stand out from other business coaches in the arena? And so I went through a little bit of a business rebirth, and now I'm the brand witch that you see now. So I know that was a really long answer, but I kind of wanted to backpedal
Okay,
how some of the
perfect.
other steps up here.
No, it's great. I think it's really important that people see the journey. Like they
Yeah.
really, I think people miss. It's like, okay, you see someone jump online, they're showing their gifts, and then all of a sudden they are making ten to $15,000 a month. And what's the in between? No one talks about the in between. No one talks about the fact that, like, not necessarily you, but like I've seen people in my own client divorce, break up with friends, break up with the business, break up with, it's like the breakups essentially, the broken roads essentially lead up to the manifestation. And that's what people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, the broken roads bring in the alchemy, the pain brings in the alchemy of manifestation that you're trying to create. It's like you can't create, like when people don't talk about this, and I think this is really important, is people don't talk about the fact that creation requires a shift.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you have that in your damn reality. Okay. Second of all, when you have to shift, woo, full body chills. When you shift, you have to bring in new aligned energy, meaning you have to change. You have to grow and you have to make different choices, which are uncomfortable because growth is naturally uncomfortable because it's not your normal way of moving through things. So people want to, like, I see this all the time. It's like, I'm awakened. I have gifts. I know what it is. I know this and I can channel. I can do things. That doesn't mean that you just jump into a spiritual business. That's not what that means. It means learn out who you are as a person, become authentic as fuck, and stop pretending to be whatever. You know how many tarot readers there are? A fucking shit ton. Go on TikTok, you'll find one For You page if you write in tarot cards. And see what pops up. It's like you're going to see that the typical, I love that you are bringing forward this one percenter because it's like you can feel it in your soul. At least it was like, I'm not here to just do hypnotherapy. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get to this point, but that's where I'm moving into. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm being such a Virgo right now and writing down things you said that I wanna comment on. So one second, you said, "Not here to do just" okay, there we go. I was like, "Oh, that's a good point. I wanna respond to that."
Michelle
I
and
am
her perspectives.
such a fucking Virgo, except I'm messy. I'm messy, and we can probably blame all the water signs in my chart and my ADHD for that, but nevertheless.
I'm a water sign. Too. Guilty as charged. I'm actually not messy though, so it's kind of funny that you say that. I
No,
am a messy person. No, I
I'm a
have to be very
total slob.
strategic. So it's funny.
I'm a total slob. But nevertheless, you were talking about you didn't use these words, but you said like you need a strong self-concept. You have to know who you are. And I wanted to speak on that for a minute. And then I want to move to what you just said, not here for hypnotherapy, you're here for like a spiritual mission, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. If you go into entrepreneurship without a strong self-concept, you will not be successful. You have to be so fucking convicted in who you are and have confidence with that and fall and that's what leads to follow through in aligned action. Now, I actually have a very close friend who's a business coach who does this kind of work with brand new people. I don't do this kind of work with people. You have to come into my world with self concept. It's just not something I enjoy doing. So if anybody needs that, let me know. Tell you my friend's name. She's great. Loves doing the identity work. Identity work is so important because, like, then in my world, and you've been introduced to this a little bit, we do what I call spiritual identity work. But you can't do spiritual identity work if you don't already have a strong self concept. What do I mean by spiritual identity work? I mean, like, this is a term I came up with myself to really dive into, like, who you are spiritually. What do you believe spiritually? How do you put your spirituality in a box? Well, my spirituality can't be boxed in. Yes, it can, because you practice spirituality different than I practice spirituality, and that's okay, right?
Yep.
So You have to like having a strong spiritual identity is ground zero, all the work I do with people. And from there, we build brands off of it. Cause then you mentioned you're not here just to do hypnotherapy, and I'm not here just to do business coaching. My business coaching is actually consciousness expansion. I'm here to help people expand their consciousness through spiritual identity work. And then once we get that and they can crystallize their spiritual mission, now we can get into brand strategy that takes a already decent brand and elevates it to a level where they develop a cult like following. So I just wanted to mirror back some of those things because I was like, yes, 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 yes. As you were saying that, oh, I've had to go through it. And I think entering into entrepreneurship with a strong self concept is super important. And then once you're in it, you have to be willing to pivot and grow as your self concept evolves. But you're not even going to be able to do that if you don't come in with a crystal clear like conviction of like who you are.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just gonna have like a it's just gonna fall through, fall through, fall through. And
Mhm.
I tell you the difference between mentoring people in a way of who has those or who has done that identity work, the shadow work, the inner child awareness and, like that, they're able to channel their channels more clear. They're more connected with their soul. They're more connected with their purpose. They're more connected to who they are. So it's like, as much as I would love for you to like share your message on social media, please do. But in the same note, like hire a coach that helps you find out who your identity is because it's really, really important, you know?
1,000 fucking percent. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you. So I
Unpopular opinion here, share your tarot cards, but you're probably not gonna move past tarot cards. You're gonna
no.
that space because that's comfortable for you, and I don't know about you, but I'm gonna guess you're in the same league as I am, is, like, I'm not here to just make, 10K months. Like, that sounds pretty, but, like, we're here to change fucking systems.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, like, on one hand, I do have a lofty goal of becoming a millionaire, and I do think it'll happen. And I have some pretty big money goals for next year, but I'm not doing it for the money. The money is a byproduct of the work that I do. And so if you go into this type of entrepreneurship solely because you want freedom and money, you're not going to be fucking successful. There has to be a bigger cause behind it. And you mentioned something earlier, and so I took my little Virgo note. What I want to give an example of what like having a strong self-concept does for you in your business. Now, most people, just to give some like business perspective, if you have a brand and you go through a full body rebrand, like I went through a full body rebrand where I burned down every single offer in my product funnel. I burned down my client avatar, like everything I did, I scrapped, right? That previous iteration you saw. And as I scrapped this, I was in a dark night of a soul with hypnotherapy. um, Hypnotherapy getting to the emotional root cause of my chronic illness. My chronic illness was also raging, but I still showed the fuck up. I still built. I still did my marketing. I still did the things. And my rebrand was quicker than average in terms of regenerating a hot audience. What do I mean by this? A typical like burn up to the ground rebrand can take anywhere from 6 months to a year to get people acclimated to your new message, your new brand positioning, your new whatever, so they start buying again. It took me a matter of a couple months. Why? Because I have a strong identity and self-concept, and that makes it easy to stay accountable in business.
Yeah, I did the same thing this year. I burned my whole to the ground. I don't the only thing that survived was my Soul Weavers, and even that got a rebrand. I don't do Soul Weavers on random days, it's portals only, and then everything else, all my offers, still my workshops and stuff that are still on there, and I think they're great because 'cause they're foundational, but yeah, my workshops are very different. Yeah, completely. Same thing, 3 months. Took me 90 days. Yep, yep.
And I mean, like, the reason it takes so many people a long time when they go through this burn down and redo thing is because they're stuck in this like woe is me energy. And then you can experience that. We're humans. We're not supposed to have, we're not supposed to always be happy and hunky dory. We're here to have the full range of human experience. But the woman who is able to be convicted in who she is, or the person who's able to take aligned action, that aligned action is also going to give you clarity and warm your audience up quicker. So Oh, no, not here, but my brain went here. I mean, I am a brand and marketing coach, so my brain is gonna go here. And I can, talking about strange psychic gifts, I've noticed I have psychic gifts about, like, business, and it's so interesting, like, I can scroll social media and be like, "That bitch is fronting. She's not making as much money," like a business coach, you know? Like, there's this one in particular that follows me, I don't follow him back. She's always trying to nurture me, I can tell. I'm not interested in her. But her Instagram is like, "Make $100,000 a month." I'm like, "Girl, you barely making 10K. What are you talking about?" Like, I can just know these things, but I also can just, like, look at social media in general, and I can just be like, this is the pivot you need to make. This is, the angle you should take. This is what your divine assignment is. It's not being expressed through your brand." Like, I can just, like, see the moving pieces of the front end of someone's business. It's crazy.
And that's what a good coach is when they do business marketing is they can see what pivots, it's like those aspects of yourself that really need to move in a way. It's like, yeah, similar. I can always tell when someone's authentic and when they're not. It's just
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
leaking energy. It's like, I don't give a shit how many followers you have because you bought those things. I know you bought those things. When you could tell, it's like you look, you're like, bitch, you don't have 17,000 followers. You have like 200. And I know you bought them all.
Also, followers don't really mean anything because, like, aside from all the traditional reasons, like, I do email list building for a big part of my marketing, you
Same.
know? So, like, there's just because someone, on the contrary, has 2,000 followers doesn't mean they're not successful because you don't know what strategies other than social media that they're employing to bring people into their world and to get leads. So, there's so many layers.
Yep. I mean, I've seen it over and over again in my world where people are essentially, have 20, 30,000 followers and they're not making any money. Because the thing is, there's a difference between conversion, and I know you know this, so I'm just going to reiterate this for the audience. There's a difference between conversion and a following. And I can tell by the content when someone's posting if their audience is cold or warm. And it's loud. And it doesn't even necessarily mean you have a lot of engagement. It could be that people are popping into your DMs. It could be that your email list or whatever that looks like. And honestly, if you're charging, I don't know, a couple of grand or $3,000 or $4,000 for a container and you're doing that, you have 5 or 6 of those, you're making more money than someone with 20,000 followers all
Mhm.
day. All day.
Yeah. Like, I teach social media marketing because it's something I employ, but I also teach email list building marketing, and I've been in containers with very successful women, uh, who that's not what they focus on. So I think one thing as an online entrepreneur is really using your discernment because there's so many more layers that go into success or generating leads. And that's another I can, like, also look at someone's page and tell how far along they are in their business, if they're a good fit to work with me. It's crazy. Having that open third eye is crazy when it comes to business.
Yeah. Well, and there's just some people that are really good at marketing. That's not them, but there's a lot of people that are I'm not great at marketing. I don't feel like I'm great at marketing. Like I couldn't go into someone's field and be like, this is what you need, but I can tell you what belief they're holding and what frequency
Yeah.
they're holding and what energetic blueprint they're holding in their field that's not making so their marketing is magnetism. I can tell you that, but I can't tell you I'm not a marketer. Like I'm not great at marketing, but I can tell you other aspects.
But we all have our own gifts, right?
Yeah. 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 It's like those foundational aspects. I actually was telling a client the other day, I said, if you were in a room with 50,000 people and you wanted to tell someone what you did for a living, would you be able to stand there and tell them what you did for a living without feeling like you had to water it down or change it in order to feel liked?
That's a good question. Because here's the thing, in my world, we build category one brands, and you cannot give any fucks if you're liked. You cannot look for validation from your marketing, your content. You have to be a magnet, and some magnets attract and some magnets repel. So that's a really good question because I think wanting to be liked and wanting approval or caring what others think is one of the number one blocks people experience from creating a brand that creates a cult-like following,
Oh, yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah. I've had people say, well, I can't post that because my mom might see that, or I can't talk about my inner child because my dad might see it. And it's like a conversation with your parents. I mean, my mom listens to my podcast, and I'm going to tell anyone that's on here, have a conversation with your parents and say, it's not about you. This is my,
Mhm.
it's not about whether you did a good enough. It's not about whether you could have, should have, or had to change something. You did what you knew how to do.
And I would add to that too. So, like, if you're concerned about what people in real life, like, let's say you have a virtual business like we do, right? Like, I get most of my clients virtually.
Yeah,
If
same.
you Yeah, okay. So you have a virtual business and you're worried what people in real life are going to say about you. They're never going to buy from you. They're never going to send you their money. They never want to work with you. Your friends will never be your clients. Your mom will never be your client. So if you need to remove them from following you, remove them. I actually removed, not because I care that they see I'm a weirdo, not because of that. But I removed most people I know in real life from my business social media because they were just living in my stories, lurking. And I was like, you're taking up space where other people could be instead. And so I have a personal Instagram as well too. And I
Same.
keep them separate and I treat my business social media like a digital storefront. And then my personal one, I doom scroll, look at memes and post pictures of myself, like doing normal day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. To post pictures of my kids. I don't put anything on my business page of my kids. I mean, I talk about motherhood a little bit, but yeah, no, same. It's like I'm all over my business page and my personal page. You'll rarely see a photo of me on there. It's my kids, it's going boating, it's my personal life. And I don't it's really interesting because clients always want to add me on my personal page and I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. I always get that, like, try to add me on Facebook. I'm like, "Nope, no, I
It's
don't."
good to have separation.
Yep. Well, and my kids don't wanna be public, that's
Yeah.
the other thing too, is my kids don't wanna be on a public platform with just Joe Schmo from India that's watching and,
Yeah.
'cause a lot of creepers out there, just to be real, but yeah.
My husband's really private, doesn't like doesn't even have social media of his own. He's very private.
Oh,
So
wow.
I don't put him on my business Instagram, and if I do for any reason, I put like a censor, like a smiley emoji over his face to respect his space. Because I you know how, like, they talk about, they, meaning, like, nutritionists and stuff, talk about, like, the 80-20 rule with eating, like, 80% eat well, 20% go rogue, have fun. I kinda feel the same way about your social media in terms of marketing. 80% should be incredibly on brand with your brand voice, brand positioning, niche, offers, etcetera, and then you can have a small amount that gives away a little bit about your personal life because that will help build your like, know, and trust. So I'm always very discerning about how I do that though, because, I try to like, obviously my husband's very private, so I'm not going to bring him into that. But like I went on vacation recently and I was showing like videos from vacation in my stories and stuff like that. So I do think that you can do it in a way that helps build like know and trust. But that's generally my rule is that 80-20 kind of thing. And I definitely treat my social media like a digital storefront because that's the first impression people are going to get when they step into my quote unquote store.
Yeah, yeah. What's one advice you would have for someone who wants to move into that 1% energy?
Their category of one, the own lane. So I have a process that I take people through. And so I'll kind of give you guys a boilerplate process I take to become a category of one. So you need to already have a niche when you come into my world. So that already needs to be hammered out. And if you haven't, you need to work with somebody to get your business foundations established before you kind of entertain these things. So then you come into my world, you have your niche, you have your signature offer, you have your system backend set up, right? You have all that stuff. So, what do we do from here? Well, if you come into my world, more than likely you are either a spiritual person or you are a spiritually curious and closeted person. So, what we have to do here is judge out your spiritual identity. Um, and who you are, what you believe, how you label yourself. What is your divine purpose? Because no one else has the same purpose as you. Just like you were articulating how you see like geometric things. Like I don't have that. That's not my gift. So we need to figure out like what are your unique gifts and really judge those up. What is your divine assignment? Really understand that. And from understanding your divine assignment, now we can start to kind of move on. This is the process I take people through in my Brand Witch Mastermind. So once we have this established, we can start to think about, okay, how do I embody this version of myself, right? Like, because people can, we were talking about this bit earlier, like people feel inauthenticity. So how can you embody this version of yourself, both in your day to day, but as that bitch who shows up in her work and also in your marketing? Be that person in your marketing. I have a client who calls herself spiritual, for example. She's spiritual and ratchet. And so that's like one of the names she calls herself. And I was reviewing some of her marketing copy and it sounded like an ad agency wrote it. And I was like, this is not spiritual at all. So we like changed up the language and we were like, she's a relationship coach, like your dusty ass situationships and stuff. Like we were saying that instead of like toxic relationships, right? So you start to speak in your marketing like this version of you. After we get embodied, we can start to really hone in on, okay, so now I'm getting really clear because action breeds clarity. What is my spiritual mission? From your spiritual mission, you figure out your brand mission. And this is where we really start to do the category of one word. You take your brand mission and you say, okay, what is my story? What is my edge? What makes me different than others? How am I different than others? And how can I take all of this and make it something that is unreplicable by others? Because by this point, you've gotten so much clarity over who you are spiritually, who you are in an embodied sense, and what your unique mission is. And then we take that and we apply some brand strategy to it to make you a category one brand and marketing strategy. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me, but I'm a entrepreneur, so, I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, I'm, like, following everything you're doing. I'm like, "Mhm, mhm, mhm. That makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense." Yeah.
And at that stage, what we might do is like somebody might have a full blown rebrand like I did, and someone might not. I worked with a client who was a business coach, and we uncovered she's a really gifted shadow worker and a psychic. And so she didn't burn anything down. What she did was she took her shadow worker and started bringing it into like what she called like business coach and shadow worker, right? And she took her existing offers and just added some shadow work modules to it and just zhuzhed up what she already had and like pivoted her messaging and pivoted her voice around it. So it can go one of two ways. It just depends on the person, right? There's no right or wrong way. It can be like an elevating of the brand or a total rebrand. But at this stage, we kind of look at your entire ecosystem, all your offers, your brand positioning, your messaging, and we really figure out how to take all of that and make you a category of one, make you like nobody else out there.
So cool. Yeah. I think this really fits into connecting into your soul and, like, the weaving of your soul and what your soul really wants you to bring forward. I really wanna emphasize that your soul is your higher self, right? It's just bringing in those aspects of yourself. And I said this in my Dark Feminine the other day. It's like everyone always looks for outside of themselves, like, "Oh, I've gotta, like, tap into this higher dimension of my higher self." No, bitch, your higher self is looking through your eyes.
I love that you say that because I have a similar perspective. I find it very strange when people say, like, what would your higher self do? I'm like it's a different, like a separate entity from them. Cause I've always seen higher self as that's just a word to describe soul. That's,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yep.
So I've always found that very interesting too, like tap into your higher self. I'm like, or just calm down and listen to your intuition and your spirit, It's not something that's outside of you.
No, no, and really, it's like our eyes are the gateway to our soul, and our heart is the connection to our soul, so it's the it's the ability to be able to really hone in on who you are as a person, and that's your magnifying energy of amplifying that frequency out into the universe and becoming that magnetic version of yourself. And I think that most time people I hear this a lot. It's like, I wanna anchor in my highest timeline. I wanna tap into my higher self, really outsource my where I really bring in the energy of not going along with what spirituality teaches, because for me, it didn't work. I can't just be, "Oh, love and light. I'm just gonna anchor in all this love and light." 'Cause you know me, I'm like the person that dives in the shadow, and whenever I do collective work, I'm always down into, like, the grid systems, the swampy water, the entity removal, the slum, the shit that no one wants to go into, and I'm like, "Let's drop in there, let's pull this shit out, and let's see what the magnifier is gonna bring out today," you know? that a lot of times people, if they just went into themselves and be like, okay, this is what I'm here to learn, this is what I'm here to do, people wouldn't be constantly looking for that like next, certification, that next hit of dopamine, that next hit of essentially trying to find something that someone else has that you don't have. Does that make sense?
It does. I agree with you too, 1,000%. And, if we wanna look at the, like, highest timeline language, you can't even step into your highest timeline if you haven't excavated those things from your system anyways. I'm not really into the love and light shit either. So like I actually am not a huge fan of law of attraction, at least law of attraction in the way that it is taught. Do I believe law of attraction exists? Yes. Do I believe thinking positive thoughts will manifest my reality? No.
Yeah.
It's just spiritual bypassing at that
Yeah.
point. And so I think that's probably what you were saying too, a lot of the highest timeline. Step into my highest timeline
Am
and
I in
think some good.
alignment? That's always my favorite one. Am I in alignment? I was like, I don't know. Are you? Do you feel like you're in alignment?
No, I mean, half the fucking time you're in alignment, it feels like fucking chaos. You know it?
Feels like your whole life shattering and you just like threw glass on the floor and you're like, yeah, make a masterpiece out of the glass you just chucked on the floor.
Yeah. I like to give the analogy. So I teach yoga too on the side for fun. And so I like to give yoga analogies. And I'm assuming have you taken a yoga class before? Yeah. Okay. So like, like in a yoga class where you think you're doing a pose correctly and the teacher comes by and goes, all right, let's just move this a little bit. Now bring your belly button to your spine. Now rotate. And all of a sudden you're like in alignment, but it feels a lot harder and you're using a lot more muscles. Yeah. That's what alignment really is. And then from alignment, you birth that which you desire, and then you come out of that space and then you're in an equilibrium. So a lot of people are like, I just want alignment. I'm like, okay, so you want to be uncomfortable? Let's go, bitch.
One of the most beautiful things you'll ever birth is when you're uncomfortable as fuck
Hmm.
and your whole life is shattering. It's always interesting to me when I get people and they're like, my life isn't moving in the direction. I'm like, oh, how comfortable are you in your life right now?
Hmm.
Comfortable are you? Are you ready to shatter it? Are you actually shatter the fuck out of what you think you want? And
Hmm.
then let's take you into the next step because it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. Growth is you crying in your bed, and then the next moment you're on screen preaching about what you just learned crying in your bed, right? Right? It's like daily work. And I'm gonna like I'm a huge advocate of like how you talk to yourself because I think that your biggest hype fan and really holding an energy of magnifying energy takes you being like, and I love how great I am today. I love that this light is bringing so much energy into my field. Oh my god, I love how easy it is to bring in clients. Like, that's actually how I talk to myself every single day. Like, that's verbatim. Like, I just am literally riffing with my inside my head. Because if I'm riffing with myself and holding a vibration of, first of all, I don't give a fuck. Two, I'm magnifying as fuck. And three, oh my God, my life just gets better and better. Then the energy moves in that such. But I didn't get to that point without diving into who I was, why I don't, my whole entire life, hi, I was too much for a lot of people, right? I'm the one that sees through the bullshit where everybody else is like, I really like that person. I'm like, no,
Absolutely not.
absolutely not. Like, "No, thank you. Right. So, like, I'm always the one, I have a huge bullshit meter. And so for me, it was being okay, not liked, first of all, not being invited, not being popular, and not being the one that everyone chooses. And I had to sit with that uncomfortable. And so the fact of it is like the mindset work, yes, it comes, but it comes when you go into I call it shadow technology, which is, I believe, your higher self incognito. Personally, it's like, hey, you're supposed to learn these lessons. I'm going to give you the exact formula of this, right? And then the shadow gives you that technology and that information to magnify into being able to have those higher levels of consciously thinking. That's how I think it works.
I agree with everything you're saying. I don't do this level of work with people because I have a very low tolerance for working with people who have trouble getting stuck in their own shit. Sounds like that's kind of your je ne sais quoi, though. It sounds like you love that shit. So here, just a little PSA, people. After you work with Michelle, then you can reach out to me, work with her, get your shit in order, and then and then come to me after you get your shit in order. I'm not the coach that gets your shit in order in that way. Michelle is. But one thing I do in terms of shadow work is witch wound work. And I think that you have to really do the work you're talking about first to even be primed for witch wound work. Now, for those of you chiming in who aren't familiar with what witch wound work is, witch wound work is basically all of us have had past lives or ancestral experiences, or perhaps both, if you're like me, and that has evolved around literally being burned at the stake for being a spiritual person. Um, that's for being a spiritual person. You know, I could go into the histories. There's not a history lesson, but basically, the witch wound can present itself in many different ways because for years, especially women who held spiritual power were exiled and persecuted and killed for using their gifts, right? And those who survived often had to hide their magic to stay safe. And that trauma didn't just disappear, it got passed down through the generations through epigenetics, subconscious beliefs, and or being held in our energy field, right? Like I have a past life that got burned at the stake in Scotland in late 1600s. And that contributed partly to some of my chronic illness as well, because these things are always layered and nuanced. So it can kinda what happens is you need to do the kind of work that Michelle does first, and then when you do spiritual identity work with me, we'll do a lot of witch wound work. Even if you think you've done it already, there's more to do. There's many layers to this work. And so fear is a mechanism that the Matrix, through the witch wound, uses to keep women and people from stepping into their spiritual power. So we got to do this during spiritual identity work. And what happens is the way this presents itself is super unique. I see people who are afraid of losing their wealth, their stability, and their success by quote unquote coming out of the spiritual closet or taking their spiritual brand and up leveling it a bit more. But really, the fear is deeper than that. And it's that ancient fear of being cast out and losing everything. But in order to do and excavate this work successfully, you will need to do the work that Michelle talked about first to even be receptive enough to do witch wound work.
Yeah. Oh, I've done a lot of witch wound work.
Me too.
Sh-
And it's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Like I find a program that pops up and I'm like, I got something new to work on.
Yeah. Well, and mine even, I'm an Orion starseed. So even that aspect of, I was in Mintaka and I don't know if you're much in this, like the starseed aspect, but
I know I know enough to talk about it.
yeah. So Orion starseeds aren't really talked about a whole lot, to be honest with you. My lovely green eyes, right? Classic Mintakan, people with green eyes have, I mean, at least what I understood was it's a sign of being an Orion starseed. And yeah, a lot of us don't have remembrances of our experience because our memories were wiped because it was so detrimental. And I remember, I mean, I've told this story before, and I even have a free workshop if you want to dive into the things where I take you into like actually a regression of your experience and I put you in Mintaka and it activates a lot of things. But I was in the shower because it's a water planet and I turned to the left. It's always the left for me. And I had deep grief and I was like, whoa, and this was in January of this year, and I was in the shower hysterically sobbing, and all of the memories came to flood in, and it was betrayal and deep-rooted of, like, abandonment, and it actually what Mintaka looks like to me is The Way of the Water, Avatar, and I remember watching that movie and, like, crying, and I'm going, "Why am I crying in a movie?" And it was so emotional for me, but it was that DNA imprint of I believe we have codes. We're gonna go back to a little bit what I do is the coding of people, and they run code. So I'll get a 4 to 12 sequence coding system that's essentially I call it the glitch in the system, right? And it's like they downloaded codes and information to imprint on our DNA system that runs in the simulation a particular way. And when that simulation runs and you hijack it, you remove that coding and then you actually upload the code that we were supposed to have, which I call God Codex. And then the code reciprocates and it moves everything and it recalibrates your system. Now, during a calibration, just like any DNA activation, like you have to eat good food, you have to hold the frequency, you have to have the belief systems. Like you can't just upload a code and be like, yeah, I'm cured. I'm not going to have any issues afterwards. It's like you have to hold the energy of not going back into the old simulation systems. So essentially, when Orion starseeds, they have deep wounds of betrayal, right? And so
Fascinating.
that also comes forward in clearing out being able to see it online, right? Because it's like, my God, what if someone kills me? Are they going to are they going to completely destroy our entire planet?
Mhm.
That's what's
Yeah.
happened, and so we have those imprints essentially on our soul that brings forward these coding systems that we don't even realize subconsciously that we're running until the codes come in and they're like, "Ooh, remember this?" It's like, that's what awakening is. It's really just remembering who you are at soul level, those imprints, and then essentially alchemizing the trauma to be able to help planet Earth move into a higher level of frequency so we do not have a rerun of like Atlantis and Lemuria and Orion Wars, right? Watch Star Wars, that's the Orion Wars. And so that also I think should be part of your witch wounds because that's part of Orion starseeds is that deep betrayal and losing home.
I would consider that a part of the witch wound, just like I consider like Native American erasure and like, just different ways that people have been persecuted for their beliefs. And, my brand marketing brain going as you're talking was thinking like what you really do as a coach is you prime spiritual entrepreneurs to have the emotional capacity to create legacy. That's really like what you do. That's where like my brain's going. I c you prime and I would probably say are a lot of your entrepreneurs you work with a little newer or less established? Yeah. So you take newer.
No, I've worked with really established like
Yeah,
clients too. And a lot of times what I can do is I can
they
actually
just need their
go
next level at that
they can
point,
hit
don't
their
they?
next level. So essentially, what I feel like my really strong capacity is my niche is really being able to take people's capacity level and blow it the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. You work with people, you increase their emotional capacity and resiliency through these modalities that you offer and only you offer so that they can like really hit that next level in their business. It's really cool. That's all of all of that spiritual language you said was filtered through my marketing brain like that. How I do it, folks. That's how I do it in real time.
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, you're like, yeah, and all of these things just came trickling through, and wow,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
definitely.
cool. Yeah, and that's what makes the difference, and why everybody. I tell people, I'm like, there's enough work for everybody, right? Like, I do something very unique. You do something very unique. I have clients to do very specific uniques. It's like really that's the foundational aspect of a business is being able to be like, first of all, I know what I do may sound like, woo, it works.
Mhm.
Seen it. I am living proof that it works, right? And I've seen other people, it's living proof where they've taken their business and just like you can take an iconic stuck brand and really amplify that and to be very specific. And I think one of your greatest gifts is the conversion, right? Like you can
Mhm.
and bring the conversion that people are.
And you mentioned a minute ago, there's enough for everybody, and it's true. It really is. Like you and I both serve entrepreneurs just in different ways. And I know my own entrepreneurial journey, I've needed different things. Sometimes I've needed more masculine energy structured business coaches. Sometimes I've needed more energetics healing coaches. Sometimes I've needed a hybrid. Like there's always like in my journey, I've needed different things. There was a year when I worked with an amazing at the time, she calls herself something different now, but at the time, she called herself a six-dimensional manifestation coach, and she's a trans channel and worked with a collective that she would channel. And I worked with her to up my manifestation game, and then that's where I cracked open to being able to channel light language, right? Like, so also as an entrepreneur, just be discerning what do you actually need right now because there's going to be something for it. Whatever you need, there's going to be something for it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, do you have a final message for anybody that you feel the collective may want to hear?
We don't have a final message. Well, I will say this was a really fun conversation. So thank you so much for having me on. Nothing specific coming through except that abundance is always on the other side of fear.
I love that. Yes, yes. And so true. So
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. If something stirred in your soul today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, and let it ripple. Hit that subscribe button and stay close. The revolution isn't coming, it's already moving through you. Until next time, stay grounded in your truth and rise in your divine remembrance. Have a beautiful day.